I want to speak about tragedies a little bit and the fact that Alex is going to get his MBA. I need to know if that was something that was like, all of these companies will tell you like one thing that you have to go do to like get the job, or the one like you said earlier, like the silver bullet kind of like situation. Was that MBA, or was that just, how did that happen for you? Like, how do you, just tell us everything about your MBA, because I'm going to sit here and be quiet.
Well, okay. Can I add to that question too, of like, for people who are feeling stuck and they're like, well, fuck it, I'm just going to go get another degree. Like,
that's what I was getting at.
Should they do that or not?
Man, I'm walking into the lion's den here. I'm ready to go. So two awesome questions, and I can talk about kind of my process, and then generally how I try to be helpful to others. So I'll start off by saying I'm a super weird duck when it comes to MBAs, and when it comes to deciding to get one. Partially because I will say leaving Catalent, where I was before, to get an MBA was basically the hardest professional decision I've ever made, for really good reasons. I was at a company that I absolutely loved, working for a manager who is like a mentor and a friend to this day.
Shout out Steve.
Me and shout out to Stephen Duque, the Jedi Master, and doing work as a product marketer, like that I'm to this day massively passionate about. But I left to do an MBA for essentially three reasons. So first is just being a massive business nerd. And this, I think, goes back to being a history major. I wanted someplace where for this, brief 2-year period, I could essentially work with people who study this stuff for a living and really dive into not just what I think about B2B SaaS, which is kind of my corner of the world, but why I think it. And so basically planned out my business school experience at Tuck up at Dartmouth, where I basically from before when I started, to like identify the research I wanted to do, the people I wanted to work with. And so that was just a unique thing that is way harder to do if you're working full time. Secondly, so I'd spent like my career essentially selling and marketing to Fortune 500 executives. That's who we sold to at Catalent. And the biggest like hole in my experience was that I have never worked at a Fortune 500 company. I have never been, in that experience day to day where, you might have a great title, you might have all these people under you, but you have to think as much about the mechanics of your company as you do about what you're trying to achieve. And so I realized that a lot of the underlying frameworks and the thinking and the sort of ideas that drive how those executives think originate in business schools, either in their own training, in the training of the consultants that are working with them. And so business school became this way of essentially reverse engineering the way the people I was selling and marketing to think on some level. The last one, and I think this, like, I will go to the grave saying that everyone should be a history major and it's the most useful thing in the world. But like in tech, we are great at growth. We are great at innovation. As an industry, we are not always good at building companies the right way, at building companies that treat employees the right way, that have the right culture, that interact with society in the right way. Can you
repeat that, please?
Louder for the people
in technology, we are very good at building innovative, high growth companies. We are not always great at doing that the right way.
Sound the buzzer. Oh wait, Bridget, use this for the video and have the
I'm so sorry to interrupt your thought, but like that was like
that's very you said it.
But I think one of the criticisms sometimes of MBA programs is, well, you just study things from the past, right? You don't look as much at where things are going. The reality is I wanted the opportunity to basically look back at the past and say, what are the companies in any industry, in any vertical that have done this the right way, that have built businesses that make profit and drive growth, but that means something in the lives of their employees, that means something to their communities, that are that pull people up regardless of where those people come from. And so that is something that the kind of case study method and like the B school view of the world is actually really good at. So that was me. If you talk to, a lot of MBAs, you'll get all sorts of different reasons. So do not take this as like, this is why everyone gets an MBA. But that was the sort of pro on the side of my decision, the con being like, I love this company, I love this team, and it was super tough to leave.
I think there's a reason why there are people who have worked at these Fortune 500 companies for 20 some odd years, and the average tenure of someone at a tech company is like a year and a half. Like there's a reason for that. Two, I was talking to my friends this past weekend about, I wanted to get, none of them are in tech. They're in very different sectors of life. And I wanted to ask them, like, what do you think about education and higher education in general? And I think in a perfect world, it should provide you with an unbiased view of the world. Like you should get all sides of a story. And I think tech specifically loves to tell their side of the story, side of the story. You have the tech VCs in San Francisco who are like, don't get a job, only learn how to code and come here and we'll teach you about life. And for a while I was like, yeah, like fuck higher education. Like, nah. There's definitely pros and cons to each of those like non-extremes, but like the people who feel in the middle. I just think that a lot of work needs to be done in education before it can really provide that actual unbiased view that gives you a holistic view of the actual world that's going on right now. Not what the world looked like 25 years ago when the tenured professor was actually like doing the thing versus just researching it, and what it looked like 25 years ago. And I have a lot of qualms with the longevity of the lessons that are being taught right now, and if they're up to date, and if they're not, why are they not? And can you update them? But also on the other side of it is like, I can learn life experiences in the world. I can learn about different people when I'm in the world, and I can learn about how businesses work in the world, but I get a very, very biased view of that world. And so, oh my God, I'm like, there is a pro to education and like higher education and going and seeking out these opportunities when you go into it with a mindset of like, I just want to make sure that I'm seeing it the way that other people are seeing it. And I think that you specifically are doing this, and you've chosen this path in a way where it's just like, you are so freaking passionate about like learning and seeing things in different perspectives. And like, you don't want to go and get an MBA so you can be a chief of staff. You don't want to go get an MBA so you can graduate and be a product manager. And you don't want to go and get an MBA so that you can walk into an office and be like, I know strategy because I read 17 Harvard Business Review cases. Like you want to use your knowledge for good and not just for your own like ego.
Well, and that's not normal for at least most of the MBAs that I've met, right? It's more often, first of all, like I don't have to be the one to tell you that you're incredibly smart and you're going to get an MBA while also like doing all of these other things and applying it. I think from my experience with people with MBAs is it's like a break, and like they're not doing anything else and they're just doing that, and they're living this like weird pseudo post-college fraternity lifestyle, and they all live in the same building in Chicago, and it's so strange to me. But you're not doing that. So like, yes, there's like you're making me want to potentially, no, I'm not going to go get an MBA, but I'm being serious. Is like, wow, that's really inspiring of like, not even just an MBA, but think about how he's educating himself on top of doing other work that like, we can all do that. We don't have to pay $1 bajillion to do that. So he's figured out the balance, obviously. He also
Alex
probably works a lot harder than I do. So
Jeff.
That's a me thing though.
But I think it's cool because you're doing the applied learning thing. Like you're doing the thing that you should do in a learning environment where you're learning the thing and then you get to go out and do it versus
you're not
like
skating. Yeah.
So.
And honestly, the reason for that, it's like the reason that, and we were talking about sleep earlier, and like that is kind of the thing that takes a backseat sometimes, but like the reason that candidly 30 to 40 hours a week of my time is dorm room fund, is consulting work that I'm doing, is research that I'm doing. I would go crazy if I didn't have my hands like deep in real companies, real operational work, like working with real founders who don't have time for theory because they're trying to raise a round next month, or because they are, they need to show growth metrics, like we need to make this happen. If I were just living in this sort of like intellectual bubble where, we're reading cases and like convincing ourselves that this is the way the world is, like that would not work for me. So, there wasn't kind of a grand plan. It was more just like, I didn't want to feel like I was sitting on the sidelines for 2 years. I wanted to, take the classroom stuff, put it in the brain, filter it through like real world work, and kind of use those two things to inform each other. And I think I will say one of the cool things about doing an MBA, after having done like real work and kind of knowing what you want to do afterwards, is you can use that filter in your mind to say, like, how accurate do I think the thing I'm hearing is? If I'm in a class and we're learning about the bond market, I don't know anything about the bond market. Like, I am your student, teach me everything. And like one day, I have no opinion on this because it's not my world. If I'd been a bond trader, I'd probably be sitting there telling the professor, like, well, actually, this is the way it works. But if I'm sitting in, a digital marketing class, like, yeah, I have a lot of opinions on that, and I can sort of filter, here's what's helpful, and here's what I think, may not be accurate to Sarah's point. I think like the underlying lesson here is amazing knowledge can come from anywhere, whether you are paying for it or not. TLDR, some of the most valuable knowledge is knowledge you don't pay for. And you should put yourself in a position to absorb the knowledge that makes the most sense to you, not just the knowledge that someone is trying to sell to you, whether that's a, class online or a, 2-year educational experience.
Drop the mic, drop your AirPods. Yeah, that's it.
I just learned so much.
I feel like this is one of those times that me and Bridget talk about where we're just like, we've been spewing a lot of shit because we had a lot of opinions that were like just backed up by our own other opinions and not like experiences or other people's inputs. And I think like, yes, I'm still very much so wary about the people who choose to get an MBA specifically right after college, where it's like, Bart, you don't even know anything yet. Like, what are you gonna do after you get your MBA? Like, go get a PhD and then never actually do business? Which is like, fine, go get a PhD. It's really cool to make everyone call you doctor. That's so lit. But like, don't pretend like just because you have this education, like formal education, makes you superior to someone who can also do it without with a different view. From
if you're gonna go get an MBA, make sure you're like Alex and not like everybody else that goes and gets an MBA. That's all I'm saying.
Just be like Alex. We're making shirts that say "Be like Alex."
A second, I think I figured out, Sarah, what that sound is. That sounds like I'm literally on a train. I think it's my refrigerator. So that's great.
Were you talking? Because I couldn't hear a thing.
I said, that sound that you're always like, what is that? Like, why does it sound like you're on a train? I think it's the fridge.
Oh, cool.
But I'm going to go try to figure that out because I can hear it in my own now. And I'm like, oh, that's not okay.
It doesn't sound like that in the audio, like files. So that's probably good.
Okay,
right?
so then we can it's fine.
Or we could just watch you try to fix the fridge. That might also be good content.
Yeah, turn the computer towards the fridge.